The desert was still when the first shot cracked. Dust hung in the air, trembling in the dawn's weak light. And somewhere beyond the canyon rim, a lone rider pressed a hand against his side, where crimson seeped through the leather. They called him Eli Cade, outlaw, drifter, and man with too many sins carved across his trail. But to the few who dared to know him, Eli was more than the dust on his boots. He was a man running out of time and out of chances. The gunfire faded into silence, leaving only the low moan of the desert wind. Eli's horse, a weary sorrel with scars along its flank, shifted beneath him. Each step stirred the earth, leaving behind a trail of blood-darkened sand. He whispered, half to the horse and half to himself, "By dawn I'll be gone, but she'll carry what I couldn't." The vow wasn't meant for the canyon or the wind. It was meant for her Clara, the woman with whiskey-brown eyes and a strength forged in silence. She was the secret Eli kept hidden in the folds of his outlaw's heart. A widow, bound by the dust of her past, and the only soul who had ever seen him not as a hunted man but as a broken one. The story of Eli Cade began long before that wounded ride at dawn, back in a town that wore its sins like faded paint, where the saloon's piano was always out of tune, and the sheriff's badge gleamed dull under the smoke of cheap cigars. That night, the saloon was crowded with voices, gamblers clutching cards, drifters clutching bottles, and men clutching grudges. The piano stumbled through a tune no one cared to name, and Clara worked the counter, sliding glasses across wood that had seen more blood than whiskey. Eli entered with the kind of silence that drew eyes. Not because he was loud, but because danger always travels quiet. His hat brim shadowed his face, but everyone in that room knew the name, Cade. A man wanted in 3 territories. The barkeep froze mid-polish, muttering, "Hell's bells." "He's back." Clara's gaze caught his, steady as ever. She poured him a glass without asking, and in that simple act, an unspoken truth filled the air. There were ties between them deeper than any outlaw's coin. The night stretched on. Cards slapped the table. Whiskey burned throats. But trouble never needed an invitation in the Wild West. It just walked through the door, wearing spurs that jingled with promises of death. 3 men entered, dust-heavy coats marking them as bounty hunters, their eyes locked on Eli. The tallest spoke, voice sharp as a rattler's strike. "Eli Cade, dead or alive, you ride with us tonight." The saloon went still. Even the piano player's hands froze above the keys. Eli didn't rise. He took one slow sip from the glass Clara had given him, then set it down with care. The room waited, holding its breath like a candle's last flame. "Finally," Eli said, voice low and calm, "by dawn, one of us won't be here to see the Sunday best. Pray it ain't you." And in that moment, the outlaw's vow, half love, half curse, hung heavy in the smoke-filled air. The saloon's doors trembled as the night wind pushed through, carrying with it the smell of sagebrush and storm. A hush clung to the room, thicker than cigar smoke. All eyes stayed fixed on Eli Cade and the 3 bounty hunters who dared call his name. Clara tightened her grip on the bottle she held, though her hands betrayed nothing. She had seen men die in that very room, seen hats fall into the dust and boots left ownerless by morning. Yet when Eli's voice cut through the silence, something deeper than fear coiled inside her chest. It was the weight of a vow she knew he carried, but had never spoken aloud. The tallest hunter shifted his coat aside, revealing the steel glint of a Colt at his hip. His partners mirrored him, each hand hovering, itching to claim the price on Eli's head. But he didn't move. He leaned back in his chair, hat brim low, a man carved out of calm and shadow. He let the silence work for him, stretching every heartbeat into eternity. Then, with the kind of slow grace that comes from living too long on the edge, he set his hand on the table. Not on his gun, on the table. "You boys chasing coin," he said, voice steady as a church bell toll. "But coin can't buy what you're walking into." The bounty hunters laughed a harsh sound, brittle in the smoke. One spat on the floorboards. "All I see is a man too tired to stand." "You've been running, Cade. Word is you're slowing down." Eli's eyes flicked toward Clara. Just for a second. Just enough for her to understand the truth he carried. Slowing down, yes, but not broken. Not yet. Outside, thunder rolled low, promising rain that never came. The piano player, sensing what was about to erupt, slipped quietly out the back door. The draw was sudden. A blur of hands, steel flashing like lightning. The first shot tore through the saloon, sending glass shattering, whiskey spilling like blood. Men ducked, women screamed, chairs toppled. When the smoke cleared, one hunter was down. His hat lay in the dirt near the door, a dark stain spreading across his chest. The desert wind slipped through the crack, carrying silence after the gunshot. The other two hunters hesitated. They hadn't expected Eli Cade to still be faster than the stories claimed. Faster, even wounded. Eli stood now, steady despite the crimson that stained his shirt. His revolver gleamed in his hand, a natural extension of his will. "You want me," he said, his voice calm as the storm outside. "Then you better be ready to meet the ground first." The hunters backed toward the door, rage warring with fear in their eyes. They knew they'd lost this round, but men chasing bounties rarely let go easy. One of them hissed, "By dawn, Cade, you'll bleed out in the dust, and she'll watch it happen." His gaze cut toward Clara, sharp and cruel, before they slipped out into the night. The saloon exhaled. Conversation didn't return. Folks just shuffled, eyes low, pretending they hadn't seen. Because in the frontier, survival meant silence. Clara moved toward Eli, her steps soft across the broken glass. She reached for him, her voice steady but low. "You can't stay here, Eli, they'll be waiting. And the sheriff won't look away forever." He looked at her, eyes lined with dust and regret. "I never asked for forgiveness, Clara. Just time." She poured another drink, slid it to him, but her hand lingered on the wood. "Time's a cruel dealer, Eli. It never plays fair." For a heartbeat, the world shrank to just the two of them, her steady gaze, his weary defiance. There was something in that silence, something that no vow spoken could match. And then Eli said it, under his breath but clear enough for her alone. "By dawn, you'll carry my legacy." Her breath caught, but she didn't answer. She couldn't. Because in the Wild West, promises were written in dust, and dust never held long against the wind. The storm outside broke, rain hissing against the tin roof. Eli pulled his coat tighter, his shadow stretching long across the floor. He knew the hunters would return. He knew dawn might not find him standing. But for now, he had a horse waiting, a vow burning, and a past chasing faster than any bullet. And somewhere, out in the storm, the desert listened. The storm had no mercy. Rain hammered the tin roofs of the town, poured through the streets until the dust turned to mud. Lightning carved the sky open in crooked scars, and every flash threw Eli Cade's shadow long against the walls. He rode slow, sorrel hooves splashing through puddles, the weight of the wound dragging his body forward. His coat clung heavy to his frame, soaked in both rain and blood. Still, he pushed on because men like him didn't stop. They only ran until the earth itself told them to lie down. Behind him, he could almost feel the hunters circling, their hatred a storm fiercer than the thunder above. Clara watched from the saloon's window, her fingers pressed white against the sill. She had seen him ride out into darkness before, but never like this. This time, she felt the vow heavy in her chest, as if she were the one who had spoken it. "By dawn, you'll carry my legacy," she whispered to the empty room. "Don't you dare leave me the weight of your ghosts, Eli." But the desert didn't answer. Only the rain did, tapping its rhythm against the glass like a funeral march. Eli pushed his horse hard through the gulch that opened beyond town. The canyon walls rose high, jagged as old scars, funneling the storm into a howl that swallowed every sound. He knew this land, knew its shadows, its echoes, its merciless truth. Yet tonight, The land felt different. Like it too had turned against him. A shot rang out. The canyon walls threw it back, echo after echo. Eli ducked low in the saddle as the second shot split stone near his head. Sparks spat into the rain. The hunters hadn't wasted time. They'd followed close, wolves in human skin, patient enough to wait until the storm swallowed the world. Eli spurred the sorrel forward, pain screaming in his side. Each heartbeat was fire, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning the ridges above. Another shot, this one close enough to carve his hat brim. The desert wind carried silence after it, broken only by thunder's growl. Then came the voice. "You can't outrun dawn, Cade." It was the tallest hunter, the one with eyes like broken glass, the one who had promised Clara would watch him bleed. His voice carried down the canyon, echoing like judgment. Eli gritted his teeth. He didn't answer. Words wasted breath he couldn't spare. Instead, he drove the horse harder, weaving through shadows where lightning couldn't find him. But the canyon narrowed. And Eli knew too well what that meant. No way forward but through. The ambush came fast. Two riders thundered out from behind the rocks, rifles raised, rain streaming down their faces. Their horses kicked mud into the storm as they cut across Eli's path. For a heartbeat, time froze. The rain slowed, lightning paused mid-sky, and Eli's hand moved. Steel flashed. His revolver barked fire, and one rider dropped, hat tumbling into the muck. The second veered wide, firing wild. Bullets sparked against stone, ricochets screaming into the storm. Eli didn't wait. He pressed on, every stride of his horse carrying him deeper into the canyon, deeper into the storm's throat. But blood loss is a crueler enemy than any man. His vision swam, edges blurring. The world tilted, colors bleeding into one another like paint washed away. He whispered, voice weak but sharp, "Not yet. By dawn I'll decide. Not you. Not them." The horse seemed to answer, muscles straining as if it understood. Together, outlaw and beast carried the vow forward, one last defiance against the storm. Behind, the hunters regrouped. Their leader raised a hand, signaling patience. His voice cut through the rain, steady and sure. "Bleed him dry. By sunrise he'll crawl, and when he does, she'll carry his name." The words echoed, twisted by thunder, and for a moment even the storm seemed to agree. The canyon swallowed Eli whole, and as the night deepened, the line between vow and curse grew thin, carried away in the rain. The storm faded before dawn, leaving the desert raw and broken. Pools of rainwater shimmered in the canyons, like mirrors holding the sky's last bruised clouds. Eli Cade leaned heavy in the saddle, breath ragged, blood soaking through every stitch of his shirt. His horse slowed, hooves sinking into soft earth. They had outrun the hunters for now, but Eli knew the desert never gave true mercy. It only delayed the reckoning. He dismounted with effort, boots squelching in the mud. Every step was a battle, the world swaying around him like a saloon lantern in the wind. He pressed a hand to his wound and staggered toward the canyon wall. And there, hidden in the rock's shadow, he found it. The entrance to an old mine, long abandoned, its timbers blackened by age. Eli paused, whispered to the silence, "Guess the dead'll make room for me tonight." Inside, the mine smelled of rust and dust. Wooden beams groaned, water dripped in the dark, and echoes lingered like ghosts with nowhere else to go. Eli collapsed against the wall, sliding down until he sat on cold stone. His revolver rested loose in his lap, but his eyes, sharp even through pain, watched the entrance. He thought of Clara, her eyes steady, her voice carrying truths sharper than bullets, the way she poured his whiskey like it wasn't poison, like maybe she believed in something beyond the wanted posters nailed across the territories. He pulled a folded scrap of paper from his coat pocket. Its edges were worn, smudged by dust and sweat. On it, faint words scrawled by a hand that shook even then. "If I don't make it to dawn, she carries what's left of me." The vow wasn't new. He had written it weeks ago, the night he first realized the bounty on his head wasn't just coin, it was prophecy. He would not live long enough to outrun it. But Clara could carry something he couldn't. Legacy. Memory. The part of him that wasn't carved from blood and sin. A noise jolted him from thought. Boot steps. Slow, deliberate, crunching against gravel. Eli's hand closed around his revolver, raising it toward the dark mouth of the tunnel. Shadows stretched long as a figure stepped inside. For a heartbeat he thought it was one of the hunters until he saw her. Clara. Soaked from the storm, her hair clung to her face, eyes burning brighter than the lantern she carried. "You fool!" she hissed, rushing toward him. She knelt at his side, her hands pressing cloth to his wound before he could speak. "You think you can bleed out alone? Leave me with nothing but a ghost." Eli's breath hitched. "You shouldn't be here. They'll follow." "I don't care." Her voice trembled but held. "If the desert takes you, it takes me too. That's the vow I made, whether you heard it or not." For a moment, the mine was silent, save for the storm dripping through cracks in the stone. Two souls bound not by law nor promise, but by the fragile truth of love that had no place in the West. Then Eli did something rare. He smiled, a broken, weary curve of the lips. "By dawn, Clara. It won't be the desert carrying my legacy. It'll be you." Her hand shook as it pressed against his chest, feeling the weak but steady thud of his heart. "Then stop wasting time dying. Start fighting to live." Outside, the hunters searched the canyon, torches flickering like restless stars. Their leader raised his rifle, eyes scanning the ridges. "He's close," he muttered. "And if the widow's gone too, then we've got more than bounty to claim." His men grinned, spurs jangling as they split, their voices swallowed by the night. Inside the mine, Eli heard them. He pushed himself upright, groaning against the weight of his own blood. Clara tried to steady him, but he shook his head. "No more running. They want me. Let the canyon decide who walks out." The vow, once whispered in smoke and whiskey, now sharpened into steel. And in that moment, as torches drew nearer and thunder rumbled far beyond the desert rim, Eli Cade was no longer just a hunted man. He was a reckoning waiting to be written. The mine breathed like a dying beast. Every gust of desert wind pushed through its hollow bones, carrying whispers of men long buried. Eli Cade leaned against the timbers, revolver in hand, his chest rising and falling in shallow rhythm. Blood still seeped, though Clara's cloth slowed the flow. The lantern she'd brought flickered, throwing jagged shadows across the stone. Clara crouched beside him, her face pale but unyielding. She had seen too much death to flinch at the sight of it. Yet this was different. This was him. Outside, torches moved along the canyon rim, hunting the dark. Voices drifted in the hunters, patient and cruel. Every echo reminded Eli that the night had teeth, and those teeth were closing in. "Eli," Clara whispered, her voice trembling in the silence. "Tell me why. Why carry this vow alone?" His jaw tightened. He looked at her, eyes hollow with years of running. "Because vows break hearts. I swore to a dying friend I'd deliver something worth more than gold, a name, a legacy. But I never said it'd be mine." She frowned, confusion knitting her brow. "Whose legacy, then?" Eli's hand shook as he pulled the folded paper from his coat again. He pressed it into her palm. "His name was Jonah Cade. My brother. Sheriff once, before the desert swallowed him. He begged me, swore I'd see his story told. By dawn, someone had to carry it. I thought, maybe you." Clara unfolded the paper, the lantern's glow spilling across smudged ink. Words barely legible, but enough to tell of a man who fought for justice, who died for it. And here sat Eli, Outlaw brother, shadow carrying the weight of that vow through blood and fire. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You could have told me. I thought if you saw me for what I am, you'd never touch the glass I drank from again." His voice cracked, rough as desert stone. "But you kept pouring, Clara. You kept looking at me like I was more than the posters said." She touched his hand, steady, warm against the chill of his skin. "Because I knew you were a man drowning, not a devil. And now I see you're not just drowning in your own sins. You're drowning in his." The mine groaned, dust raining from the beams. The hunters' voices grew louder, closer, until Clara's heart hammered with each echo. She gripped the lantern tighter, fire reflecting in her eyes. "Then hear me, Eli Cade," she said, her voice fierce in the gloom. "I'll carry Jonah's name. I'll carry yours. But I won't carry a corpse. You hear me? You don't get to quit on me before dawn." Eli's breath caught, a broken laugh escaping. "You always were stubborn." Outside, a stone clattered. Boots crunched closer. Clara rose, lantern raised high, her silhouette defiant against the dark. "Then stand with me. If the desert wants your blood, it'll have to take mine too." Eli pushed himself upright, pain flaring but will sharper still. He loaded his revolver with trembling hands, each click echoing like a tolling bell. The first hunter's torch broke through the entrance, firelight spilling across the cavern floor. "Cade," the voice bellowed, cruel and sure. "By dawn you'll crawl. Hand over the widow, and we might let you die quick." Clara's hand tightened around the lantern. She glanced at Eli, eyes blazing with unspoken words. He shook his head slowly. "Don't listen. They never bargain true." And in the quiet breath before violence, Eli Cade felt something shift. For the first time in years, he wasn't running alone. He had her. And he had a vow that meant more than his own blood. The lantern flame guttered, shadows clawing at the walls. Clara whispered, "If you fall, Eli, I'll carry more than your name. I'll carry your fight." Eli's revolver lifted, steady despite the tremor in his hand. His voice cut through the darkness, iron and sorrow woven as one. "Then let the desert bear witness." The hunters closed in, and the mine, alive with ghosts, waited for blood to join the dust. The mine mouth glowed orange with torchlight. Shadows stretched long across the stone as the bounty hunters stepped inside, boots heavy, spurs clinking like chains. Rain still whispered at the entrance, but within the cavern the only sound was breath, theirs, Clara's and Eli's. Eli stood, though every vein in his body screamed to collapse. His revolver rested steady in his grip. The widow's lantern shivered in Clara's hand, casting light across her fierce eyes. The leader of the hunters stepped forward, hat low, rifle cradled as if it were an extension of his arm. His voice echoed through the hollow dark. "No more running, Cade. The sun's near rising. Let the dirt take you." Eli spat blood into the dust. His voice came back low, rough as gravel. "You ain't the dirt. You're just men who forgot they'll meet it too." The first shot shattered the silence. Eli's revolver roared, fire kicking shadows wild across the beams. One hunter stumbled, clutching his chest before crumpling to the stone. His hat rolled into the mud, the desert wind carrying silence after the gunshot. Chaos followed. Gunfire cracked like thunder. Sparks flew as bullets kissed stone. The cavern filled with smoke and screams. Clara ducked low, lantern swinging wildly, her heart hammering with each flash. She saw Eli, his body a silhouette of defiance, every shot drawn not by strength but by vow. His wound bled fierce, yet his hand never faltered. 2 hunters fell. The cavern walls shook with the echoes of their end. But the leader remained. He fired once. The shot ripped across Eli's shoulder, spinning him back against the rock. Blood bloomed fresh. Clara cried out, rushing toward him, but Eli lifted a hand, warning her back, eyes burning with that outlaw fire. The leader advanced, boots grinding bone and gravel beneath him. His rifle gleamed, his voice calm, cruel. "You bleed too much, Cade. Dawn'll rise, but you won't. Your legacy dies with you." Eli raised his revolver, but the chamber clicked empty. The sound was louder than thunder. The hunter grinned. "Looks like the desert picked sides." Then came the lantern. Clara hurled it with both hands, glass shattering against the cavern floor. Flames burst, wild and hungry, devouring the dry timbers, licking up the walls. The mine came alive with fire, shadows twisting into demons. The leader stumbled back, rifle lowering as heat swallowed him. For the first time, his eyes flickered with fear. Eli, bleeding, broken, lifted his revolver once more. He spoke through the smoke, voice hoarse but sharp. The desert don't pick sides. It just takes what it's owed. And with the last round he'd hidden in the chamber, the gun roared. The leader's body hit the dust. His hat tumbled after, silent in the firelight. The mine groaned, beams splintering under the heat. Clara rushed to Eli, pulling his arm over her shoulder. Together they staggered toward the entrance as the cavern burned, flames swallowing the ghosts within. Outside, dawn's first light cut across the canyon, pale and unforgiving. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed raw. Eli collapsed to his knees, chest heaving. Clara knelt beside him, tears streaking through the soot on her face. "You kept your vow," she whispered. Eli's eyes found hers, weak but steady. "Not yet. By dawn, you'll carry it." The sun broke fully over the horizon, painting the desert gold. Smoke rose from the mine behind them, carrying with it the past, the sins, the vows, the dead. And in the silence after, only the desert bore witness. Dawn broke clean across the desert. The storm was gone, leaving the earth scarred, washed, and strangely quiet. Smoke from the burning mine drifted upward, curling into the pale sky like prayers lost on the wind. Eli Cade lay slumped against a boulder, his hat tilted low, breath shallow but still there. Clara knelt beside him, one hand gripping his, the other steady against his chest, as if to remind him the world hadn't stolen him yet. The silence was heavy. Not the silence of peace, but the silence after gunfire, when even the birds refused to sing. "Eli," Clara whispered, voice raw, "stay with me. You've done enough running." His eyes flickered open, tired but stubborn. He managed a broken smile. "No. One more mile, one more dawn." She turned her head toward the horizon. The sun stretched long shadows across the canyon floor, painting the land in colors too fierce to name. It was beautiful and cruel all at once, like the West itself. Eli coughed, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "You remember the vow?" Clara's throat tightened. "By dawn I'll carry it." He nodded, closing his eyes as though the weight lifted at last. "Then it don't die with me." The desert wind picked up, tugging at her hair, whispering through the stones. For a moment, she swore it sounded like voices, the kind you hear only when a place has taken too many souls. Jonah Cade. By the brother, the sheriff. His name lingered in the dust, waiting for someone strong enough to hold it. Clara squeezed Eli's hand tighter. "I'll carry him. I'll carry you both." His grip weakened, but his lips formed words she almost missed. "Then I can rest." Hoofbeats echoed faint across the horizon. She turned, eyes narrowing. Riders, whether lawmen, scavengers, or more hunters, she couldn't tell. But she knew, the West knew, it never left room for long peace. She stood, slow and steady, the vow burning in her chest. Eli's revolver lay heavy at her side. She holstered it, then reached for his hat, pressing it firm against her chest. The riders came closer, dust rising beneath their horses. Clara lifted her chin, eyes set on the horizon, her voice a whisper only the desert heard. "You'll not take him. Not while I breathe." Eli stirred, barely conscious, his voice a ghost against the dawn. "The desert don't remember names. Only the ones brave enough to carve 'em in the dust." Clara bent close, tears slipping free. "Then let me carve yours." The sun rose higher, and with it came the sound of spurs, the gleam of rifles, the promise of another fight. Clara straightened, lantern soot still on her hands, fire still in her eyes. Behind her, Eli Cade's breath trembled in and out, fragile as the morning light. Before her, the desert stretched wide, endless, unforgiving, yet alive with possibility. The outlaw's vow had not died in smoke and fire. It lived in her. And as the screen fades, the desert wind carries the last image. A widow standing tall, revolver at her side, the rising sun painting the horizon in blood and gold. The West was not done. Not yet. The desert had no patience for the wounded. By sunrise, the canyon's heat began to rise, drinking up the storm's gift of water, leaving mud to crack and harden. Clara knelt in that half-light, one hand still clutching Eli's, her other resting on the revolver that felt far too heavy in her grip. Behind them, the mine was nothing but ruin. The fire had devoured the ghosts, collapsed the timbers, and buried the bodies of the men who'd hunted him. Smoke still drifted upward, black against the pale gold sky. Eli's breath rasped shallow, but his eyes opened to slits. He studied her face as if memorizing what strength looked like. "Clara." His voice was little more than gravel. "You need to ride. Leave me. Legacy don't weigh as much as a body." Clara shook her head, her jaw set. "Don't tell me where to ride, Eli Cade. You handed me a vow, not a choice." The hoofbeats grew clearer. Riders. Dust curled on the horizon, the shimmer of steel at their sides catching the dawn. Clara pulled Eli's revolver free, testing its weight in her palm. She had poured whiskey for men who thought her weak, but none of them had ever seen her eyes in a moment like this. Eli tried to push himself upright, but his body betrayed him. He slumped back with a grunt, anger flashing across his face. "If they see you holding my gun, they'll shoot you same as me." Clara's lips curved, not in a smile but in defiance. "Then I'll shoot first." The riders crested the rise, a mix of lawmen and scavengers, faces unreadable, eyes sharp. They slowed when they saw the smoke from the mine. One of them spat into the dirt. "Reckon Cade's down there. Smells like burnt devil." Another raised binoculars, squinting. His gaze caught Clara's silhouette against the canyon rocks. Not alone. The widows with him. Their leader, a deputy with a badge dulled by rust, sneered. "Good. Less work for the undertaker." Eli's hand brushed against hers, weak but insistent. "Clara, don't carry me into hell with you." She turned to him, eyes fierce. "Then don't let go. If you want me to carry your legacy, you're coming with it, alive." The words struck him harder than any bullet. For the first time in years, Eli Cade felt something he had long buried, a reason to keep breathing. The riders descended, dust pluming under their hooves. Clara rose to her feet, standing tall against the sunrise, revolver steady in her grip. The canyon stretched wide behind her, silent witness to what was about to unfold. She whispered, not to Eli, not to them, but to the desert itself, "You've taken enough." Not him, not today. The first rider raised his rifle. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. But before she fired, the desert wind shifted, carrying with it the faint echo of something older, Jonah Cade's name, scrawled on a paper, burned into a vow. It was no longer just Eli's fight. It was hers. The riders didn't see fear in her. They saw fire. And in that moment, the balance of dawn changed. The riders fanned out across the canyon floor, hooves pounding like a drumbeat of doom. Dust rose behind them, golden in the morning light, but their faces were carved in shadow. Lawmen or scavengers, it didn't matter. Out here a badge could weigh less than greed, and a gun always spoke louder. Clara stepped forward, revolver gripped firm in both hands. Her heart thundered, but her eyes were steady. She'd poured whiskey for these types her whole life, men who thought her nothing but background. But today, she was the storm they hadn't reckoned on. Behind her, Eli stirred, his voice broken but sharp. "Clara, don't." She didn't turn. "If you fall, I fall with you. That's the vow I chose." The deputy with the rusted badge pushed his horse ahead. His grin was crooked, cruel, the kind that came easy to men who collected bodies for pay. "Put the gun down, widow. Cade's worth dead more than alive. Ain't no room for romance in the dirt." Clara raised the revolver higher, sunlight glinting off its barrel. Her voice carried steady, clear. "You'll not take him. Not while I breathe." The men laughed, harsh and ugly. One spit into the dirt. "You think you're faster than 6 rifles? No," she said, her voice like flint striking steel. "But I only need to be faster than 1. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Then it broke. One rider jerked his rifle up, barrel flashing. The shot cracked. Clara fired back in the same breath. Dust sprayed near her boots as the rider toppled sideways, his hat flying free, lost to the desert wind. His horse bolted, leaving him sprawled in the dirt. The others froze, the echo of her defiance hanging heavier than the smoke. Eli pushed himself onto one elbow, eyes blazing with something between pride and fear. "Clara, damn stubborn angel." The deputy snarled, rage twisting his face. He pointed at her. "Kill her. Leave Cade for the crows." The riders spurred forward. Gunfire tore the morning wide open. Clara dropped to one knee, steadying her aim. She wasn't the fastest, but she was precise, each shot chosen, deliberate. Another rider fell, clutching his leg, screaming into the dust. But there were too many. Bullets sparked off rock around her, fragments biting her cheek. Her breath came fast, smoke stinging her eyes. Eli, teeth clenched against pain, dragged his revolver up. He fired blind, his shots wild but enough to force the riders wide. His voice cut through the chaos. "Stay low. Make every shot count." The canyon became a battlefield of echoes, gunfire, hooves, and shouts swallowed by stone. Clara fought like a woman who had nothing left to lose but the vow burning in her chest. And in that fire the hunters saw something they hadn't expected. Not a widow, not a victim, an equal. 2 men hung back, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The deputy cursed, spitting venom. "Cowards! She's 1 against 10. But even he could see the desert itself seemed to shift with her, the rising sun blazing at her back like a crown of fire. For a breath, silence fell again. The riders hesitated, their line broken. Clara stood tall, revolver steady, dust clinging to her skin. "You want him," she shouted. "Then the desert takes me first." Her words carried across the canyon, fierce and unshakable. Even the deputy's sneer faltered. Behind her, Eli's voice rasped, softer now, but sure. "By dawn, she'll carry it." And in that fragile moment, Clara understood. This was no longer just his vow. It was hers. The riders shifted uneasy. The desert waited. And as the sun climbed higher, the widow's stand burned itself into the west's memory. The canyon lay quiet after the smoke cleared. Bodies sprawled across the dirt, rifles scattered, hats lost to the desert wind. Horses without riders bolted toward the horizon, hooves fading into silence. Clara stood in the middle of it all, chest heaving, revolver still hot in her grip. Her dress was torn, her face streaked with soot and dust, but her eyes steady, fierce, had not faltered. Behind her, Eli Cade leaned weak against the boulder, revolver slipping from his hand. Blood soaked through his coat, his breath ragged, but his gaze never left her. "You stood," he whispered, voice raw, cracked. "By God, Clara, you stood taller than any man I've known." Clara turned to him, lowering the revolver with trembling hands. "I didn't stand alone. You were there. Even broken, you were there." He managed a weak grin. "Ain't much left of me but shadow and stubborn." The deputy with the rusted badge still lay breathing in the dirt, one arm twisted, his rifle kicked out of reach. Clara moved toward him, revolver steady once more. His eyes burned with rage, but fear flickered beneath. "You won't make it far," he spat. "The West don't forget. More'll come. They always come." Clara crouched low, her shadow cutting across his face. "Then let them. Every step they take toward us, they'll remember this canyon. The deputy sneered, but his words faltered when she stood tall, revolver never wavering. Outlaws, widows, you'll die in the dust like the rest. Maybe, Clara said softly, but not today. She pulled Eli's hat from where it had fallen, settled it on her head. The weight of it wasn't cloth or leather. It was legacy. Eli coughed, blood speckling his lips. Clara, his voice weakened. Don't let them make you what I am. She hurried back to him, kneeling close, gripping his hand tight. You're not what they say. You carried a vow. Now I carry it too. That don't make us devils. It makes us alive. His eyes softened, though the fire still burned faint in them. Alive, huh? Feels a mighty stretch. You're breathing, she insisted, fierce as the rising Sunday. That's enough for now. The canyon wind shifted, carrying with it the faint sound of more hoofbeats in the distance. Not close yet, but coming. Always coming. Clara steadied herself, scanning the horizon. The west never gave long reprieve. One battle ended, another began. But for the first time she didn't feel small against it. She felt like part of it. She rose, pulling Eli's arm over her shoulder. He winced but didn't resist. Step by step, they moved toward the horses left behind. Each movement was agony, but each step was survival. You can't carry me, Eli murmured. Clara glanced at him, jaw set. Then I'll drag you. Legacy don't weigh near as much as a man who won't quit. He laughed, ragged and brief. You sound like Jonah. Then maybe Jonah's still here, she said. In you. In me. In every mile of this cursed desert. They reached a riderless horse, skittish but cornered by the canyon wall. Clara whispered calm, firm words, until the animal stilled enough for Eli to climb clumsy, bleeding, but alive. As she mounted behind him, the sun climbed higher, washing the canyon in fire and gold. Smoke from the mine curled into the sky, a signal to anyone watching. Something had burned here, and something had survived. Eli's head dipped against her shoulder. His voice came faint, almost lost to the wind. You carry more than my vow now, Clara. You carry me. She tightened her grip on the reins, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Then the desert better be ready, because I don't let go. And so they rode, battered but unbroken, into a west that never stopped hungering. The vow lived on, not in whispers, not in shadows, but in a widow's steady hands and a dying outlaw's breath. And the desert, eternal witness, carved their names deeper into its dust. The desert stretched endless, a canvas of gold and shadow beneath the noon Sunday. Clara guided the horse along a dry riverbed, every step jarring against Eli's wounded frame. His head rested heavy against her shoulder, his breath shallow, ragged yet stubbornly there. Each mile carved silence between them, a silence thick with all the words left unsaid. Finally, Eli stirred, his voice brittle as wind through broken glass. You should have left me in that mine. Clara didn't slow, didn't look back. If I'd left you, there'd be nothing left to carry. Legacy dies in the dirt unless someone fights for it. He chuckled weak, more cough than laugh. Always knew you had iron in you, just never knew how much. By dusk, they reached a ghost town. Buildings leaned tired against the wind, windows broken, doors swinging loose on rusted hinges. A saloon sign dangled by one chain, creaking a song no one wanted to hear. Clara dismounted, helping Eli down. His boots scraped the earth, his legs buckling, but she held him firm. Together, they crossed the threshold into the ruined saloon. Dust rose around them, catching the last light of day. She lowered him onto a bench, its wood cracked but strong enough to hold him. Then she lit a lamp she'd scavenged, its glow chasing shadows from the room. Eli looked around, eyes distant. Places like this, they remember more than people ever will. Blood, laughter, vows whispered after too much whiskey, all carved in the walls. Clara poured water from a tin, pressing it to his lips. Then let them remember us different, not as ghosts, not as wanted posters, but as something worth more. Eli's gaze fixed on her, sharp even through pain. You still don't see it. The desert don't care. It swallows names whole. Jonah's, mine, maybe even yours. Clara leaned close, her voice fierce, cutting through his despair. Then I'll carve them deeper. I'll carve until the wind itself carries your story. For a long moment he just watched her, his eyes searching. Then he nodded. A slow, weary surrender. Night fell hard. The town groaned with old age, boards shifting as though the dead walked its halls. Clara sat awake beside Eli, revolver on her lap, lantern flickering low. Outside, coyotes howled, their cries rising and falling like sorrow carried on the wind. She whispered into the dark, not sure if to him, to Jonah, or to the desert itself. You asked me to carry your legacy, Eli Cade. But know this, your legacy ain't just in names or vows. It's in the blood you spilled, the fights you chose, the woman you refused to let break. And now it's in me. Her words hung heavy, but they steadied her. Eli stirred in uneasy sleep, murmuring words she couldn't catch. She brushed sweat from his brow, her hand lingering. For all his sins, all his shadows, he was still a man who had chosen her in the end. That mattered. Out here, it meant everything. The lamp sputtered, flame guttering. Clara whispered the old line, the one spoken in every saloon when night turned heavy. The lamp flickered out. Darkness closed around them, but Clara did not tremble. She had fire enough inside her now. At dawn, she rose, holstering Eli's revolver at her side. She stepped out into the street, the town bathed in pale light, empty but waiting. Dust swirled in lazy spirals, the air thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten lives. She lifted her chin, whispering into the wide silence, "By dawn, I'll carry it." And for the first time, she believed it wasn't just a vow, it was truth. Morning came slow over the ghost town, brushing light across broken windows and empty streets. The silence was thick, a silence that felt like the desert itself leaning in to listen. Clara stood alone in the street, Eli's revolver at her hip, his hat brim shadowing her eyes. Behind her, inside the saloon, Eli Cade still breathed weak, stubborn, alive. Whether the desert allowed him another day was not hers to know. She watched the horizon. No riders yet, no dust rising. But she knew the West knew it never let go. More men would come. Bounty hunters, lawmen, scavengers. They always did. The vow weighed heavy in her chest, but it was no longer just his. It was hers too. She whispered it now, not in fear, but in defiance. By dawn, I'll carry it. She walked back inside, where Eli stirred, eyes opening to slits. He smiled, faint but real. Still here? Still here, she said, kneeling at his side. You could have left. Clara shook her head. No, we ride together. Or, not at all. His hand found hers, weak but sure. For the first time in years, his eyes softened without regret. Then, maybe the desert won't forget us after all. Outside, the wind carried voices not of men, but echoes of what had been. Jonah Cade, the sheriff who'd died for justice. Eli Cade, the outlaw who'd lived too long in shadows. And now Clara, the widow who chose to stand in fire when the world told her to kneel. Their names, tangled in dust and vow, became one. The sun climbed higher, burning the night away. Clara helped Eli to his feet. Step by step they crossed the empty town, their shadows stretching long behind them. At the edge of the street, she paused. The town was nothing but ruin, yet it felt like a witness, a place that would carry their story long after boots and spurs were gone. Clara glanced at Eli. You ready? He grinned, tired but alive. I was ready the moment you refused to run. Together, they mounted the horse. Dust swirled as hooves struck the earth, carrying them into the horizon. The camera pulls back the widow and the outlaw riding into light, the desert endless around them. No ending. Only the road, the vow, and the weight of names carried forward. And the desert, silent and eternal, remembers.